I rented a hidden Airbnb in the woods. There are strange rules to follow. Welcome to Hollow Pines. I thought I was escaping stress when I rented that hidden Airbnb deep in the woods of northern Vermont. No cell service, no neighbors, just peace, solitude, and the smell of pine needles underfoot. But the moment I stepped inside, I found a yellowed sheet of paper taped to the refrigerator, scrawled with strange, cryptic rules. The kind you don't expect unless you're in a horror movie. The kind you ignore until it's too late. I needed to get away. My job was bleeding me dry, and the city noise clawed at my nerves like nails on glass. So, when I stumbled across a quiet listing for a hidden woodland retreat, with no reviews but oddly pristine photos, it felt like the forest was calling me. The price? Suspiciously low, but I figured I could handle a few spiders and some outdated furniture for a weekend of silence. The GPS lost signal 20 minutes before I arrived. A gravel road curved through a dense tunnel of trees. Tall, ancient pines crowding the sun into speckled fragments across my windshield. I slowed to a crawl, the undercarriage of my rental car groaning as rocks scraped its belly. Then I saw it, a small wooden cabin, tucked between crooked trees like it had grown there. It wasn't in the photos, not exactly. Those pictures showed cozy lighting, wide windows, and a manicured trail to a lake. But the place before me looked worn, lived in. The windows reflected nothing but black, and vines curled around the porch posts like fingers. I shrugged it off. Maybe the outside needed work. Maybe I was just spooking myself. The door was unlocked. Inside, the air was musty with the scent of old wood and damp earth. A fireplace dominated the living room, stone-choked and unlit. A thin layer of dust coated the bookshelves, and the couch had a crocheted blanket folded so neatly it felt unnatural, like someone had just stepped out for a moment and never came back. Then I saw the paper. It was taped to the refrigerator with yellowing scotch tape. The edges curled. The words were typed, except for one rule that had been underlined several times in thick red marker. Welcome to Hollow Pines Cabin. Please follow these rules during your stay. Rule number 1. Do not go outside after 11:34 p.m. No exceptions. Rule number 2. If you hear footsteps on a roof, do not investigate. Rule number 3. Keep all mirrors covered after sunset. Rule number 4. Do not open the door to anyone, even if they look like you. Rule number 5. Feed the thing in the attic. Leave food by the hatch. Do not open it. Rule number 6. Has been removed for your safety. Rule number 7. Stay for no more than 3 nights. Check out before dawn. Enjoy your stay at Hollow Pines. I laughed. A short, awkward bark. Clearly, it was a joke. A creepy Airbnb prank to give guests a little thrill, like haunted house themes or novelty keychains with pentagrams. I tossed the paper onto the counter and started unpacking. The bedroom was plain, an iron-framed bed, a wardrobe that creaked when I opened it, and a mirror nailed to the wall. I noticed an old floral sheet draped over it. I figured the last guest had done it and left it behind. I left the sheet there. That first evening, I made a simple dinner, spaghetti and a glass of red wine. I sat on the porch afterward, letting the breeze play with my hair while the sun dipped below the treetops. There was something calming about it all. The quiet here wasn't like the quiet in the city. It had layers, chirps, rustles, a distant owl, a heartbeat to the forest. By 10 p.m., I was in bed, drowsy from the wine and the travel. At 11:12 p.m., I heard the first sound, a soft thump. Above me, I froze in bed. The ceiling creaked faintly. Another step. It was unmistakable, the deliberate pressure of a footfall. Then another, something pacing above my head. I reminded myself of the rules. One in particular. If you hear footsteps on the roof, do not investigate. That must have been the prank. Plant the rules, then scare the guests with fake noises. Maybe a speaker or some program creaks. Still, my heart thudded too loudly in my chest to ignore. I pulled the blanket tighter, eyes locked on the ceiling as I counted the steps. They stopped at exactly 11:33 p.m. The silence afterward was worse. I woke at 7 a.m. to birdsong and golden light. The fear of the night before faded like a dream. I even chuckled at how shaken I'd been. Clearly, the rules were a clever gag, an immersive horror experience for thrill seekers. A rustic cabin LARP. I brewed coffee and took it out to the porch. That's when I noticed something. There were fresh footprints on the gravel path behind the cabin. Bare feet, damp and wide set. They weren't mine. They circled the cabin twice before disappearing into the woods. I stood there for several minutes, unmoving, staring into the trees. The air was still. No wind, no sound. The birds had stopped chirping. I didn't see anything in the woods, but I felt something watching. Back inside, I found the attic hatch in the hallway ceiling. I hadn't noticed it before. It was sealed with a rusty bolt and stained around the edges with something brown. Near it, on the floor, was a small metal tray. Empty. Feed the thing in the attic. I had half a mind to leave. Just grab my bag and hike back to the main road. But that would have meant admitting I was scared. I wasn't about to run from some prank and a creepy sheet of rules. I was here to rest. I left an apple and a granola bar on the tray and slid it beneath the hatch. That night, I followed the rules. I kept the porch light off after 11. I made sure every mirror was covered, even the one in the bathroom. I bolted the door. I left another granola bar at the attic hatch, and I lay in bed, listening. At 11:31 p.m., the footsteps started again. This time, they didn't pace. They shuffled, like something crawling across the roof on all fours. The sound passed directly above my room and stopped near the chimney. I held my breath. I didn't move. Then, the scratching started. Faint, deliberate, like fingers raking against the shingles. I stuffed my head beneath the pillow, and eventually, the sounds faded. On the third day, I found something waiting for me on the porch. It wasn't food. It wasn't a package. It was a photograph, black and white, slightly curled. It showed a man standing on the cabin's porch, staring into the camera. Except it was me. Same jacket, same hair, same everything. Only, I hadn't taken any pictures. I flipped it over. Scribbled on the back in shaky handwriting were 3 words. Don't trust mirrors. I dropped it. My stomach coiled into knots. I hadn't looked at a mirror since the first day. I went back inside, pulled the sheet off the bedroom mirror, and stared at myself. Except I wasn't alone. Behind my reflection stood a second me. Tall, still, smiling faintly. My body remained frozen in the room, but in the mirror, the other me raised a hand and waved. I stumbled back and dropped the sheet, covering the mirror again. Panic threatened to claw out my throat. This wasn't just a prank. Something was horribly wrong with this place. I ran to my bag, yanked out my phone. No service. I tried calling 911. Nothing. I opened my laptop and tried connecting to Wi-Fi, but there wasn't even a router. Then I heard it. A knock at the door. For slow taps. I crept toward it, blood roaring in my ears. Another knock. I stood still, heart racing. Then a voice. Hey, let me in. You forgot your keys. It was my voice. Exactly mine. But I hadn't lost any keys. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. After a moment, the knocking stopped. Footsteps retreated into the woods. I sank to the floor, shaking. That night, I left an entire sandwich for whatever lived in the attic. I locked every door, covered every reflective surface I could find, and stayed under the covers with the light on. But something changed after midnight. The lights flickered, then went out entirely. And the footsteps, they were inside this time. The thing behind the walls. The darkness felt alive. When the lights cut out just after midnight, the cabin seemed to breathe. The wooden floors creaked, as if shifting under a weight that wasn't mine. My heart pounded against my ribs, and I gripped the flashlight from my bag with hands I could barely keep still. I hadn't imagined the footsteps. They were inside, each one heavier than the last, deliberate and slow. Not pacing, searching. I didn't dare leave the bed. Instead, I lay perfectly still beneath the covers, clutching the flashlight but refusing to turn it on. I remembered the rule: do not go outside after 11:34 p.m., but it never said anything about what to do if something came in. The steps moved past my door. I could hear them pause outside. Then came the sound I'll never forget, like nails dragging across the wood, long and slow. Then silence. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I just stared at the dark ceiling, listening to the cabin breathe, waiting for something to move again. Morning came with pale, gray light. I jumped at every sound: the whisper of trees in the breeze, the tick of the refrigerator kicking on. Somehow, the lights had returned. My phone still had no signal. And then I saw it. The tray beneath the attic hatch had been pulled back. The granola bar was gone. In its place was a strip of paper, neatly folded. I unfolded it with trembling fingers. There was no ink, only something pressed into the page, like it had been scratched or clawed by something inhuman. For words. You broke the rule. I dropped the paper, my mouth suddenly dry. What rule? I whispered aloud. I didn't go outside. Then I remembered. The footsteps. The lights going out. Something coming in. But how? I had locked everything. I was sure of it. I raced to the door. The deadbolt was still latched. The chain still hooked. But on the inside of the wood, barely visible unless the light hit it just right, were claw marks, thin, vertical, and deep. Whatever it was, it hadn't used a key. That day, I didn't leave the cabin. I closed the blinds, pushed furniture against the windows, turned every light on. I heated soup, but didn't eat it. My stomach was in knots. I called out loud a few times, just to hear something human, but the silence devoured my words. Then I decided to check the mirror again, just to be sure. I pulled the sheet off slowly. My reflection stared back, pale and wide-eyed. My hair was a mess. My jaw stubbled. But it was me, just me. I exhaled. Then my reflection blinked. But I hadn't. I staggered back. The reflection lifted its hand again and smiled. Not like before. This time, it grinned with teeth. Too many. Too long. I threw the sheet over the mirror and backed away until my shoulder hit the wall. From behind it, I heard a whisper. Not words, just breath. Like someone exhaling softly into my ear from the other side of the wall. At 3:47 p.m., I made my decision. I was going to leave. The rules had failed. The cabin wasn't a joke or a game. It was a trap. I packed my bag in record time, took one last look around the dusty living room, and headed for the door. But it wasn't the same door I'd entered through. There were no windows anymore. No porch light. The wooden paneling on the door had changed, smoother, darker. No handle, just a keyhole I hadn't noticed before. And I didn't have a key. Panicked, I ran to the back door. Same story. The doorknob was gone. Just that same small, circular keyhole. I ran room to room. Every exit was gone. All the windows now showed solid black. Not just darkness. Nothing. No trees. No light. Like the cabin was now floating in a void. I screamed. I punched the walls. I threw a chair against the window. It shattered the glass, but behind it was a solid stone wall. As if the forest had collapsed in on me. The cabin had sealed itself. By nightfall, the rules seemed less like a warning and more like a taunt. I sat in the hallway, staring at the attic hatch. The tray was gone. Something had pulled it into the dark. The hatch groaned once, then stilled. That's when the whispers began. Not outside, not from the attic, from the walls. They murmured just below the threshold of understanding. Not voices I knew, not human. I pressed my ear to the paneling, and a fingernail tapped back. Slowly, deliberately. That night, I didn't sleep in the bed. I locked myself in the bathroom with every mirror covered. I turned on the faucet just to drown out the whispers. It still got through. I must have dozed off near dawn, because when I woke, the faucet was off. The mirror, uncovered, and me, smiling at myself. But my reflection wasn't sitting. It was standing behind me. I screamed and backed into the tub. My foot slipped and cracked against the tile. I scrambled out, eyes locked on the mirror as the thing mimicking me tilted its head slowly, so slowly, and lifted a hand to press against the glass. I covered it, threw a towel over it. I didn't look back. On the morning of the fourth day, the front door was wide open. Outside, the forest had returned. Birdsong, mist, trees swaying in the morning breeze. I should have run, bolted, screamed for help, but I froze because something stood at the tree line just beyond the cabin steps. Me, or at least another version of me. Its skin was pale, waxy, like candle wax left out in the sun. Its eyes were too wide. Its mouth twitched. It raised a hand, beckoning me, and in my own voice it whispered, "Come back inside. You forgot to feed it." I slammed the door shut and locked it, but the tray was already gone again. I heard above me a low groan in the attic. Something shifting, moving, no longer waiting. The rules hadn't saved me. I hadn't broken any, had I? Then I remembered. Rule number 7. Stay for no more than 3 nights. Check out before dawn. Today was the 4th day. That evening, the knocking returned. But this time, it came from inside the walls. The mirror in the bedroom cracked without being touched. A long fracture running down the middle like a wound. The lights flickered, then dimmed. I found another note in the kitchen. This one freshly typed, with ink that hadn't dried fully. New rules, effective immediately. Rule number 1. You may not leave until the attic is fed. Rule number 2. You are not permitted to sleep until the mirror is appeased. Rule number 3. The reflection is learning. Do not answer its questions. Rule number 4. Do not look behind the wardrobe after sunset. Rule number 5. The cabin is now part of you. You are now part of it. Rule number 6. Enjoy your extended stay. That's when I heard the wardrobe door creak open. Slow, grating. I turned toward it, heart in my throat. And from the crack of darkness behind the half-open door, something smiled. Not me, not human, just teeth. Rows and rows of them. The attic must be fed. They told me not to stay more than 3 nights. I should have listened. Now, the reflection in the mirror moves without me. The thing in the attic is awake, and the cabin won't let me leave. There are new rules now, and I don't think I'm the one writing them anymore. The wardrobe creaked open just enough to reveal movement. A slow, shifting silhouette behind the slats of darkness, barely visible, but undeniably alive. I didn't blink, couldn't. I backed away from it slowly, trying not to make a sound, but the floor betrayed me. A single groan of warped wood under my heel. Something slithered behind the door, and then a voice. Low, wet, too close to human, but not close enough. You didn't feed the attic. I turned and ran. The hallway was darker than it had been seconds before. The lights hadn't gone out, but they dimmed to a sickly yellow that made shadows pulse like breathing wounds on the walls. I passed the mirror. The towel I draped over it was gone, torn in two. My reflection stood perfectly still inside it, head tilted to one side like a curious child. But its eyes were black now, ink pools stretching too wide. I tried to look away, but its lips moved. "You'll stay forever," it mouthed. "We all do." I shoved a chair against the glass. It cracked, webbing like a spider's nest. The reflection didn't flinch. In the kitchen, a new piece of paper sat on the counter, folded with precision. I approached it with dread, like reaching for a coiled snake. The paper was wet. Wrong door. Try again. Feed it. There was something else beneath the paper. A single tooth. Human, by the looks of it. Yellowed at the root. Still moist. I dropped it and stumbled back, knocking over a chair. My knees hit the tile. I didn't get up for a long while. The attic hatch groaned. Not like before, not the sound of it being open, but the wood itself shifting, expanding like it was breathing. I grabbed a knife from a drawer. I don't know why. It felt useless, but I needed something. Some link to reality. A weapon against the impossible. My hand was trembling, so hard I nearly dropped it. I stood beneath the attic for what felt like an hour. The pull-down ladder was already halfway lowered, just like the night before. But the tray wasn't beneath it anymore. It was gone, or maybe used. I took a breath and reached up, grabbing the first rung. The ladder gave way with a long creak, like it resented being disturbed. The scent from above hit me immediately. Raw dust, something coppery, like a butcher shop left to fester. I climbed. The attic wasn't empty. It was bigger than the cabin itself. Impossible, but true. The wooden walls curve in ways that defied architecture. There were doors up here, dozens of them, all mismatched. Some modern, some Victorian. One looked like it had been carved from bone. But worse were the mirrors. Dozens of them, stacked and propped against the walls like an exhibit of reflections. They didn't reflect the attic. They reflected me. In every one, each version twisted. Different. Older. Dead. Smiling. Crying. One of them was covered in blood, grinning as if it had done something awful and was proud of it. And behind every reflection stood the same thing. A tall figure in black. Long arms. No face. Just a void where a head should be. Each mirror whispered as I passed. "Feed it. Feed it. Feed it." I dropped the knife. I didn't even feel it leave my hand. My legs carried me further into the attic, past the doors and mirrors, until I saw something in the far corner. A table. Wooden. Ancient. Covered in salt and black candles, each of them flickering with blue flame. Atop it sat a book bound in skin, and beside the book a tray. The same tray I placed food on, but now it held something else. A Polaroid of me, sleeping in bed, taken from above. Beneath the photo, another note. "You're running out of time. Choose who feeds it next." Or it chooses you. I turned to run, back to the ladder, back to the impossible safety of the cabin below. But the ladder was gone. The attic hatch had sealed shut behind me. The only way down now was through one of the doors. The mirrors began to shake. I screamed and bolted for the nearest door. The red one, cracked paint and brass knob. I didn't even think. I just turned it and stepped through. I was standing in my apartment, or something like it. Everything was where I'd left it. The sofa, the kitchen island, the crack in the drywall I'd been meaning to fix. For a moment, I thought maybe I'd gone mad. That none of it had been real. Maybe I'd had some fever dream in a Motel 6 somewhere. Then I saw the calendar. It was dated next month, and every day had a big red X through it, except today. And in the mirror above the fireplace, my reflection was still wearing the forest Airbnb hoodie. But I wasn't. I reached for the front door, opened it. Behind it was the woods again, the forest path, the Airbnb in the distance, and behind me, the sound of something crawling out of the walls. I slammed the door and locked it, backed away into the kitchen. There was food on the counter. Fresh. Huh. Bacon, eggs, toast. And another note. Feed it before it wakes. Your reflections are starving. Then something laughed. From the ceiling. From inside my skull. I screamed until my throat was raw. The walls pulsed with it. The sound echoed like I was inside a living throat. The next thing I remember, I was back in the cabin, lying on the floor. The mirrors were covered again. The knife was back in my hand, and the door, wide open. A woman stood outside, a stranger, blonde, mid-30s, backpack slung over one shoulder. She was holding her phone up, squinting at the cabin like she wasn't sure she had the right place. "Hey," she called out. "Is this the Airbnb?" I tried to scream, "Don't come in," but my lips didn't move. My throat wasn't mine anymore. The attic groaned. She took a step forward. I blinked, and suddenly, I was watching myself from above. Like a camera had been placed in the ceiling. Like I was the reflection now. I saw my own body rise from the floor, slow, stiff. I saw myself smile, but it wasn't me. It was the thing that had taken me, and it welcomed her inside. The cabin chooses who stays. The new guest arrived just like I did, lost, curious, unaware. But she doesn't know the cabin is watching, waiting. The rules are changing again. The attic still hungers. And now I'm trapped inside the mirrors, forced to watch as she walks into a fate worse than mine. She stepped inside with a wide-eyed hesitation of someone stepping into a stranger's dream. Her boots left damp prints on the wooden floor, quickly swallowed by the cabin, as if it were absorbing her presence. She didn't hear the door click shut behind her, didn't see the shadow pass behind the hallway, didn't notice me, watching from a mirror above the mantel. Her name was Kelsey. I would learn. She was a nurse, taking a break from the city. Needed silence. Peace. She'd booked the Airbnb on a whim. There were no reviews. That should have been the first clue. I screamed from inside the glass. But nothing came out. My mouth moved in silence. A trapped moth behind a window. The thing wearing my body. The thing I'll call the reflected. Smiled at her warmly. He asked if she needed help with her bags, just as I'd been welcomed days before. His voice was mine, his tone comforting. He lied with perfection. Kelsey didn't suspect a thing. Not when he offered her tea. Not when he told her about the rules. He even had the printed list. Aged, yellow, the same one I'd found. She laughed, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "Creepy, but cute," she said, like an urban legend. I wanted to shatter the glass, reach through and pull her out, but the mirror wouldn't let me. It held me, humming with a quiet energy like static beneath my skin. The attic groaned above. The hunger was returning. That night, she went to sleep in the same bed I had. The reflected stood in the hallway, watching her through the cracked bedroom door. Not with lust, not with malice, with hunger, but not his. The cabin's. I wasn't alone in the mirror. In the darkness behind me, other reflections began to appear, pale figures staring from distant corners. All frozen, all former guests. Some were weeping, some pressed bloodied hands to the glass. A man in a flannel shirt had no eyes, just black holes where they'd been. A child in pajamas banged soundlessly, her mouth permanently open in a scream. We were all in the same place, the attic's mirror maze. The next morning, Kelsey found her phone was dead. She shrugged it off. No signal out here anyway. Then she opened the fridge and saw the tray. A new note rested on top. One offering per night. The attic remembers. She stared at it, confused, then laughed nervously. Okay, someone's got jokes. But she didn't feed it. Not that night. She heard footsteps above her around midnight, just like I did. Heavy, dragging, rhythmic. She grabbed her flashlight and crept into the hallway. The attic hatch hung slightly ajar, the ladder now fully descended. She called out, "Hello, is someone there?" The air answered with silence. Then a sudden, Sharp knocking from inside the attic. Knock, knock, knock. Then whispering. Faint, coarse, familiar. She climbed halfway up the ladder. I watched from the mirror above the stairs, pounding my fists uselessly against the glass. She peered into the attic and screamed. She ran out of the hallway, down into the living room. She grabbed her keys, but the door wouldn't open. No matter how hard she pulled, it stayed shut. The windows wouldn't break either. I saw the mirrors pulse as she tried to smash one with a lamp. The glass rippled like water, solid, but somehow not real. The cabin wouldn't let her hurt it. It was awake now, and it had chosen her. The reflected appeared again that morning. Kelsey was shaking in the kitchen, pale, eyes red from crying. He made her eggs. She asked if he was the owner. He smiled. No, just the host. The cabin owns itself. She looked at him like he was crazy. He placed a new tray on the counter. A note already sat atop it. The attic wasn't fed. A price must be paid. Below it, her Polaroid. She hadn't taken it. The date marked on the back was tomorrow. That night, the lights went out. Every one of them. The cabin sunk into a velvet darkness, broken only by the blue flame of the fireplace, which had ignited on its own. The mirrors uncovered themselves. The reflected walked into the center of the room, arms outstretched. He turned slowly toward Kelsey, who stood frozen by the couch, clutching a kitchen knife. You can still leave, he said, but someone else must stay. Behind him, the attic hatch opened on its own. The ladder groaned as it descended. She asked him what was in the attic. He smiled wider than my face was meant to smile. The others, those who refused the rules, and those who broke them. Kelsey ran, upstairs, into the bathroom. She slammed the door, locked it, shoved a towel under the crack. The mirror above the sink pulsed once. Then it turned black. Her reflection blinked once, then began bleeding from the eyes. The words appeared in reverse on the glass. Feed it, or bleed for it. The doorknob began to twist. Inside the attic, we all felt her decision. A ripple of pain across the mirror's space. Somehow, we were all connected to the cabin's will now. The space behind the glass. We could feel when someone made a choice, and she was about to make one. She opened the door and walked slowly downstairs. The reflected waited at the base of the ladder, smiling. I'll do it, she said, voice trembling. What do I have to give it? He pointed to the tray, then to the attic. You already did, he said. You fed it your fear. The ladder drew itself upward behind her as she climbed. Inside, the attic was bigger again, colder. The mirrors whispered her name as she passed. One of them showed her childhood bedroom. Another, her mother's funeral. A third reflected her curled up on the couch, weeping after a failed surgery. The cabin didn't just feed on food. It fed on memories, pain, trauma, and it stored them, reflected them back. Forever. She found a tray on the altar, and new note. It is pleased. For now. Behind her, the door she'd entered through is gone. Another one appeared, carved with the shape of a keyhole and dripping wax. She opened it. The forest again, but different. Twilight, gray, silent. The birds weren't chirping. The leaves didn't rustle. She ran, back down the path, back toward what she thought was freedom. She reached the road, found her car, started it. The engine turned. The tires rolled. She looked in the rearview mirror, and I was there, my face staring back at her from the back seat. She swerved, screamed, looked over her shoulder. Nothing. When she looked back at the road, the cabin was in front of her again. Closer, closer, until the hood of her car passed right through it. She woke up on the couch. The tray sat in her lap. The Polaroid this time showed her asleep in the forest, curled beside a burned tree. The note said, "You're staying longer. New rules apply." And the final image burned into her mind. In the mirror above the mantel, she wasn't alone. She could see herself, standing next to the reflected, smiling, and she was already starting to forget who she was. The last guest. I've watched every guest fall victim to the cabin, each one forgetting who they are. But now, Kelsey is starting to remember, and something inside the mirrors is stirring. The attic no longer wants fear, it wants freedom. And for that, someone has to take its place. The cabin creaked like it was breathing. The trees outside had frozen mid-sway, and in the mirror above the mantel, what was left of me, was smiling, but not by choice. Kelsey stood in the center of the room. The tray had fallen to the floor. She was holding the note with trembling fingers. "You're staying longer. New rules apply." She screamed, hurling the note into the fire. It didn't burn. The paper floated above the flame, untouched. "No," she muttered. "No, I want out. I want out." The reflected stepped from the hallway. My face, my body, his voice now deeper, like static layered beneath sound. "There is no out. Not anymore." Kelsey didn't sleep. She searched every inch of the cabin, tore open drawers, pulled back rugs, punched walls. No secret exits, no hidden phones. And the rules, God, the rules, they were changing daily now. She found a new list tacked to the bedroom door. Rule number 1, do not trust your reflection. Rule number 2, don't sleep facing the mirror. Rule number 3, feed the attic your memories. Rule number 4, if the cabin hums, it's dreaming. Stay still. Rule number 5, if you see the forest split, don't run. That's how it follows. Her Polaroid was pinned next to it. This time she was pictured smiling at the mirror. Only, she hadn't smiled in days. Then came the storm. At 3:17 a.m., thunder cracked so violently that every window shattered inward. But not the mirrors. The mirrors just rippled. She huddled by the fireplace, clutching a knife, staring at the shifting reflections. I was in every one. My face, older now, paler, fading like a photo left too long in the sun. Behind me, shadows loomed. The forgotten ones. Former guests. Former selves. Kelsey's name began to echo around the room, whispered from the glass. "Kelsey, Kelsey." She clapped her hands over her ears. "I'm not feeding it anymore. Do you hear me? I'm done playing this game." The attic door dropped open with a snap. The smell that drifted down was rot, and smoke, and something wet. Kelsey went anyway. She climbed the ladder barefoot, slicing her foot on a rusted nail. Blood dotted each rung. The attic welcomed her like an open mouth. Inside, mirrors, endless as ever. But now in the center was a chair. On it sat another Kelsey, smiling, glassy-eyed, teeth filed to points. And behind her, a door glowed red-hot. "Exit" read. "I want to leave," Kelsey said. The other version of her cocked its head. "Then give it what it wants." "What is that?" "Your truth." The attic pulsed. A mirror beside her shifted to show her cradling a child in a hospital room. The child had no face. Another showed her at a bridge railing, ready to jump, holding a phone with shaking hands. A third displayed a funeral. Her mother's. Empty pews. No one came but her. Kelsey dropped to her knees. "No, no, no, please." The other Kelsey walked over and placed a cold hand on her shoulder. "The cabin doesn't take souls. It takes what makes you you. Regret, pain, shame. You fed it already," said a voice behind her. The reflected had arrived, but it's still hungry. Kelsey stood up. Something in her had changed. Hardened. "No," she whispered. "No more." The attic groaned. The air shimmered. Mirrors exploded inward, shards flying like bullets. She ran. Through the maze. Down twisting halls of glass. Each reflection now a future she feared. dying alone, forgotten in a hospital, trapped inside a mirror like me. But then she saw it. Me, the real me, trapped in the largest mirror at the end of the hall. My hands were pressed flat against the glass. Her eyes widened. You're the first guest. I nodded. My voice came out in a whisper that only she could hear. You can end this, but you have to choose. She turned back. The attic had begun folding in on itself. Mirrors cracking. Black ooze dripping from the ceiling like blood. The reflected was chasing her. But he was weakening, flickering, because Kelsey wasn't feeding it anymore. And she'd finally made a decision. She smashed the mirror between us. Glass rained like silver rain. I gasped, fell forward, out, real again, body shaking, skin cold. She had freed me. And now, the attic had no host. It needed one. The cabin began to howl. The wall split. The trees outside twisted into spirals of bark and bone. The fire turned blue. In the attic, the very air, spoke in a voice older than language. A host. A host. A host. Kelsey stepped forward. I'll stay, she whispered. I grabbed her wrist. No, don't. It'll take everything from you. She smiled. It already has. She turned to the attic's heart, where the altar now stood. Placed her hand on it. The mirrors lit up one by one. Images of every guest before her. Images of me. The girl in the pajamas. The man with no eyes. Each one winked out like a candle in wind. And then, silence. The reflected screamed. Its body began to fracture, splitting like porcelain. It reached toward the mirror it once lived in, then crumbled to ash. The attic door slammed shut. I woke up on the forest path. Birds were chirping. The wind was warm. A car approached on the gravel road. A man leaned out the window. You all right? You look like hell. I nodded. Just got lost. He gave me a ride to town. I didn't look back. Not until the car turned the bend and the cabin disappeared behind the trees. But not before I saw the attic window. And in it, Kelsey, watching, smiling. 3 months later, I tried to find the Airbnb listing again. It was gone, scrubbed from the site. No record, no reviews. But sometimes, when I drive through remote places, my phone vibrates, and there's no signal, just a pending message. We notice you enjoyed your stay. Would you like to book again? Below it, a new image, a Polaroid of me standing at the edge of the woods. Behind me, the cabin, waiting. The end.